Good afternoon, everyone. LJ here, the Go Biz Guy, the podcast for entrepreneur. That's easy for you to say with tons of coffee in my system by entrepreneurs. So listen, we have a really special guest, and I've never broached this subject, but we're going to talk a little about cannabis, and we're going to talk about her career, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And how do you HR cannabis? That's the title of the podcast, which I think is kind of interesting. So I'd like to introduce to you a friend of mine, and her husband, entrepreneurs and corporate folks. And so Amanda Schreier. Amanda, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So how's Colorado treating you? What's going on?
Oh man, I absolutely love it here. We've got those real mountains, as I call them, with the little snow peaks, and it makes the Denver traffic just a little bit more tolerable to be facing the mountains all the time. So,
okay, all right. You know, I used to have relatives in Colorado Springs, and I worked for a company that was in it was in Denver, Boulder. Anyway, so I've been to Colorado several times. Okay, and I've been to Pikes Peak. You know, I'm not an avid skier, but I think Colorado is a beautiful state. And,
it really is. Except for our sign when you come through Kansas. We have one of the worst state signs I've ever seen.
Really?
It's a brown slab of wood with white writing on it. And I said, that doesn't do the state any justice. It's kind of a running gag.
I would think that the cannabis tax revenue would be able to pay for a new sign.
I would think so, but yeah, when you enter from the east side and come into Colorado, I said that's the most underwhelming sign I've ever seen, and it's just like you're not ready for the mountains when you hit them. I mean, it's pretty entertaining though. It's a running gag around here for sure.
Oh, I'm sure. So refresh my mind? Where did you grow up at?
I actually grew up in Flatwoods. I'm a Russell High School graduate, so I went to Morehead State first for my undergrad, and then I started moving around like crazy. I'm completely nomadic, so I got my first master's in music at East Carolina, East Carolina University, and then ended up meeting Todd when I took an opportunity to go get a scholarship for a new program they had at USF, University of South Florida. Okay. And we were actually going to the same pub on different nights and never ran into each other. And we actually met online and realized we were going to the same pub sitting at the same table and never actually crossed paths.
Man, that's pretty cool. And you know what? Just as a sidebar, online, I hate to use this word. They're not hookups, but people are. But listen to me. But people are using online more so than the pub genre now. And I don't know. It seems to be safe. It seems to be something that can turn into a relationship. Anyway, I think that's cool. And so by moving around, I mean, it sounds like you are nomadic. And you love to travel, okay?
Yeah.
How many states have you actually traveled through?
Oh, good Lord. It's been a lot. I've actually gone everywhere in the U.S. except for the New England states. So that's it's the only part of the country I haven't either lived in or explored pretty heavily. So I'm long overdue.
Yeah, so I'd like to get up that part of the country too. I've not been in Dakotas. I've not been in, I traveled a little bit in my profession and everything. So, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I eventually want to, get in my Subaru, put my kayaks on top. Maybe put my golden doodle in the back there and just travel the United States for a while. I don't know.
Are you sure you're not a Coloradoan?
I know, right?
What you do out here. Yeah, you can put the kayak on the Subaru. I mean, that's a way of life out here.
Look, I'm telling you what, I love kayaking and I have the Subaru Wilderness, which is all entrenched with going on roads and everything else like that. So, do you guys kayak or anything?
No, I'm still learning how to swim since I grew up in Kentucky. I just didn't get in the water much. But where the husband's from Florida, he's the one in charge of teaching the little guy how to swim. So I said, I can teach you how to splash around and look silly, but if you want to really swim, then ask the Floridian.
Okay. So getting back to the States just a little bit, what is your favorite state that you've ever lived in?
I am living in it right now.
Okay, good. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so we actually we traveled to downtown Portland, Oregon, before, like, right after we were married, before we had our little guy. So just to get some fun times out of the system. We were walking probably 3 to 5 miles a day. I mean, just exploring the city. And about 5 months of that, and we realized that we do have a people limit on how many people we can really deal with a day. So everybody's got their limit. And I said, I love the view, but man, the people are just not worth it. It's just too crowded here. So we ended up living in Montana, which is where we started our little family. So we have the only boy in the family. So that's what actually made us come back towards Kentucky. So grandparents kind of guilted us a little bit there. So moved back, and then we moved back right before the pandemic hit. So we actually ended up staying quite a while, actually. We stayed there for about 5 years before I took an opportunity over here in Colorado. So we really missed the mountains, but Montana didn't have enough people, so we wanted somewhere in between. So
well, that's great. And so just kind of a sidebar. What the cost of living there in Colorado? How would you compare that to living in Flatwoods or so?
Oh man, it knocked the wind out of us. So it was the most humbling thing about the move. It almost felt like we time traveled 50 years into the future. And it's because the cost of living is so low in Kentucky and so high out here. I mean, we felt every bit of it. I mean, it's not the gas prices, where that's usually what the biggest complaint is. It was everything else. So, I mean, even going to get what, is a cheap Happy Meal, at McDonald's for a little guy, we're paying at least 2/3 more at times.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's very noticeable.
Yeah. It's interesting because of the RNC convention and talking about inflation and everything. I think that's across the board. In all states now. I mean, you go to McDonald's. I mean, I remember, and I'm probably dating myself, but I remember, paying about $6 for a good meal. Now it's up around $12, so it's doubled everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, at any rate, let's talk a little bit about your time in the entrepreneur world, and so you guys have been entrepreneurs for quite some time, off and on, right?
Oh yeah. So this is I had 11 years of consulting for different kinds of businesses. I had been doing HR the entire time, but also combined with other business services too. So, and Todd was born into it, and so he's been an entrepreneur. He's several generations deep on that. So,
okay,
yeah, right. I'm first generation. So,
okay, all right. Well, entrepreneur is a different world. I mean, when you talk about small business owners, I was meeting with a friend of mine who's a financial planner and everything yesterday, and we were talking about because he's a small business guy too, and he handles quite $1 million of assets and everything. And so I think the astute entrepreneur, I think talking about Todd, it was kind of a third generation thing. I think that you go back into some values that was established when you were growing up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the biggest difference. I mean, Todd grew up around the, making money kind of ideal, and that was always around him, is that ability to make money with your mind instead of your back. And I'm from a different setup. So my parents worked very hard, and I was the first one to kind of go to college and try to figure out that other pathway. So I kind of work with both now. So I'm tired all the time. I work with my mind and body all the time.
Yeah. And it's, so, you traveled into the entrepreneurial world, and you you took a position from, because you guys had some entrepreneur stuff going in, on in Ashland and a lot of things. And then you took a corporate HR professional, position and you went back because of you loved Colorado, correct?
Oh yeah, we wanted the view of the Rocky Mountains, but we wanted the amenities of the city life. And so we actually moved straight to one of the suburbs that's just below Denver. So we had access to Denver without being in Denver, which was nice.
Yeah, and I think that's the best of all the worlds. I mean, I'm not a city guy. Well, I grew up in California. I grew up in the Ventura area, and it's interesting because out here, they say like Charleston, West Virginia is a city. Where I come from, Charleston, West Virginia would be a town. Okay. Just because of how the demographics work in California and everything. And so, that it's kind of an interesting process. So did you enjoy Philly any? I mean, when you went to Philly?
I actually just managed from afar for there, so
okay.
I didn't have to do much there. So I actually managed that remotely for my last job. So
yeah, you were over 50 stores and in Colorado, St. Louis, Philly, and you managed over 1,000 employees over 5 states.
Yes.
Let me define something, or I'll let you define it. Let's define human resource. What the heck? I mean, small, medium, or large business. How does human resource? What is human resource?
Yeah, so it used to just be, how do I get paid for working there? And it used to be just payroll, benefits, and a lot of just very basic concepts on just getting people in and out of the building. And now it's really evolved into everything from employee engagement to, the total rewards package. What are my perks for working here beyond the pay, beyond the benefits? What's the culture like? Culture is a huge word right now. And it's how included am I? How represented am I in this company, and is it a good fit? I mean, it's a little bit of everything, and it has to do with everything except for how you physically do your job. It's really touching all parts now.
But we hear that there's and COVID had a lot to do with it, but we're hearing that people can't find employees.
Oh yeah, and it's funny when you look at the amount of jobs listed versus how many people are applying for these jobs. It's very skewed, and there are a couple of scams going on right now too, where companies are listing fake jobs to kind of see who's out there. Oh yeah. There's some companies about to get in trouble for it, so it's a big hot topic right now. Yeah, and it's constant fishing for to see what else is out there. But when you do that, you actually manipulate the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is how we analyze what's going on, so we can increase government funding. It really touches a huge topic. But if you have the bad data going into it, then you're working off of just bad numbers at that point. So it's very hard to get ahead of it if you don't have accurate numbers on who's looking for a job, who can't find a job. It's all of it's skewed right now.
Okay, so let's get back into that data process. So you get some federal numbers, and how do you massage that in terms of your current role working for a cannabis company as HR director?
Yeah, so it's funny. This is actually I describe it as the crossover between owning a bakery and running a pharmacy. It's kind of a very similar crossover where it's as heavily regulated and, lots of red tape, just like the pharmaceutical industry, except when you think about the manufacturing floor, physically making the products, then you're thinking about more. I said, I recognize this equipment. This is bakery equipment, basically, to be able to make the chocolates and the gummies and that sort of thing. So if you're in the edibles industry, it looks very bakery-like, so that was a little comforting since we've owned a bakery before.
Yeah. So you jumped in your Subaru and you went to the cannabis factory. What motivated you to do that?
That's just the Colorado part. No, actually, coming from the grocery industry, I did the big leap over into corporate June of last year. And I realized that there's a different kind of corporate everywhere. And just because it's corporate America does not mean it operates the same. So I was kind of in an environment where it was everybody looking for somebody to mess up. It's like, I can't wait for you to mess up so I can correct you. And that was kind of the culture, especially dealing with remote employees too, and trying to manage everybody. It's just like, I'm just waiting for you to mess up. And the cannabis industry is a lot different. And specifically the company I work at now is, I walk in and everybody genuinely wants to be there. And I said, it's not just the cannabis part. I don't think they're getting into the products.
Yeah. So listen, that's what I was going to say. So are they stoned? Are they just like eat all the chocolates and everything? So anyway, I just had to throw that in there.
That was my first comment. I said, why are you guys so happy? And I was like, wait a minute, I forget the industry here.
Right. It's So, it's interesting because, wasn't Colorado one of the first ones to legalize, cannabis, marijuana?
Yes. And the company that I'm working for now is one of the first ones that really tapped into the legal market. So there was the black market for a while, cash only, different grow operations, and same with California, where everything was kind of very hush hush, and you knew it was going on, but it just wasn't really, on the surface yet. But that transition, the company I work for now it figured out that corporate link, and if you figure out that corporate stability with a really fun product, I mean, you've got stability there, for years to come. So, I've seen a lot of companies open and close. I mean, even since I've been there a very short time, major companies are closing down like crazy because they didn't have that corporate mindset of, let's be lean, let's be conservative with our spending. It's fun it's a very fun industry, but it's also very nerve wracking to watch others, fail where your company's succeeding. It's a good business opportunity, but it does, as an entrepreneur, it does hurt my heart a little, sometimes.
Sure. And getting back to that, I mean, entrepreneurs take a risk, and I've helped several companies, small companies, go from a agricultural teacher into his business full time. He's up to $500,000 in revenue and everything, and loving life. He's got a new kid on the way, and I don't charge anybody, to be honest with you. I guess maybe I'm just getting too old to charge, but I always tell them up front. I say, listen, my hourly rate is $2.50 an hour, okay? But from here on out, I'm not even going to charge you. I'll take you out to lunch, But I think that having your insight, and I think Bell Rock Brands, are they on the stock market yet?
So they actually went through a merger and are no longer operating there, but they were originally on the Canadian Stock Exchange through. Okay. There was a merger for Dixie Brands and Mary's Medicinals, which that's the difference between the medicinal line and the recreational line. So they merged companies. And if you look at the news, I mean, it was not a very beautiful merger, but and it's messy. I mean, when you think about companies just trying to stay in business versus this one is like merging and doing this major acquisition. It was definitely a risk, especially in that industry. It's a large move. So we're still kind of shaking that out, but we're starting to get on the other side of it. The employees that stuck around through that merger are some of the most incredible people I've ever worked with.
Well, so let's dive in a little bit about being a human resource person. And you said something which is true. I mean, I think every business mirrors the personality that is either the founder or co-owner, or not so much stockholders, but I think they influence the culture. They have ideas of how to establish culture. One of the things that I always have a problem with sometimes with big corporate, I think a lot of times, they have a mission statement or whatever. Well, that's cool. It gets thrown out the door and rolled up in somebody's trash can if they handed their mission statement or something. It's kind of like a marketing plan. Marketing plans don't really exist either. I mean, if you go to the Chamber of Commerce or something, they'll say, well, you got to have a marketing plan. You got to do this. You got to do that. Well, anyway, so my point is that I think that core values is better than any mission statement. And again, I've consulted some small businesses, and what they do to their people, they set them down when they're hiring them. And we'll talk a little bit about your hiring process, but what they do is they set them down in training and everything, and they say, "Listen, here's the deal. We got these 5 core values," and they tell them up front. They said, "Listen, if you can't adhere to these 5 core values, then we don't want you to work here."
Mm-hmm.
It's just that simple. Okay. Just stop and think about that for a second. I know you're an HR person, and you talk about the benefit package and everything else like that. But I think it reaches a limit to just be focused on benefits. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it has to do with establishing the culture right from the get-go. Correct?
Oh yeah, and it's one of those things where you will find out very quickly once that person starts working if they really understood what those values were and if they really agreed to them or if they were just looking for a job. And that's the biggest difference right now. With everybody financially stressed, I have to weed out pretty quickly who's just looking for a job. And we have a lot of applicants, but trying to figure out which one is supposed to be there versus somebody that's a better fit for somewhere else. It's a very difficult process, and I have to shake it out in pretty abstract ways sometimes because everybody's so well coached up, in the interview questions and things like that. But that's for the hiring process. But
okay. So do you put cubes in front of them and say this is a pyramid and this is a cube, and if you don't see the cube, you see the pyramid? I mean, I'm just kidding. I mean, is that the freaking test that you put them through and everything? So yeah, I mean, I think that, so do you guys have like core values versus a mission statement or what?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where every company has that mission statement. It's basically a poster on the wall for most places.
It is. And it doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
Exactly. And it doesn't go over how to put it into action. And when you combine the core values with mission statements, and it's like, here's how we're going to here's who we are as people, and here's how we're going to accomplish the mission. If you don't put it into action, it doesn't really matter. It's not felt among the organization. Especially if you have stressors that are at home, you're bringing that to work with you subconsciously, and if you're trying to shake it out all the time, it's just, you're not concentrating on the core values at that point. You're just like, I just need to get through my day. But when you get it done right, it feels amazing on the other end because everybody knows what they're working towards.
Yeah, and again with those core values, and I'm sure, do you set up training? Do you have a training director, or how many employees do you have at Bell Rock?
So we have 133 right now.
Okay.
That are spread out. We provide. So here in Colorado, we have a corporate office, and that's where I basically habitate. So, but I'm providing shared services for other states as well. So. There are several EINs that we're connected with that we provide shared services for. And they're not big enough operations to really handle HR on their own. It's not worth them taking such a hit on the bottom line. So it's like I work a little bit of everywhere. So I like the shared services model.
You bring up an interesting point because, and I've talked to some friends of mine that are, you may know, Scotty Martin in Ashland. And Scotty's now the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And I told him, I said, Scotty, and I moved from Ashland to West Virginia just to be near my kids. And I think that shared services are really important. And I think that organizations like the Chamber, whatever, but I think within the company, and that's a great strategy to reach out to small growing companies that don't know how to handle HR issues. They don't know how to handle a package. They don't know how to put focus on that culture. And so I think it's a brilliant idea for you guys to reach out to these people. I don't know whether you do that autonomously or whether you do that under the the banner of the corporate banner, but I think it's a great way because I think also in marketing, I think that just recently I interviewed Sugar Ray Leonard's son, Ray Jr., and he has a host of marketing acumens. And stuff like that. And so, I think that somehow, I don't know whether I'm going to put this together or not, but somehow, we need to offer small business owners, not charge them a lot of money, but I think we need to charge or, get them so that they can get up on their feet and they feel comfortable, in doing something like HR. Because I think, help me out, I'm talking too much, but I think for a small business, HR is different from a large corporation, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where this is one area where corporate mindset comes into mind or comes into play here. And when you think about HR as a shared service and able to implement the corporate structures without being a corporation, without being a large operation, it's like you get the best of both worlds. You get to have the heart of a small business and you get to have the culture of a small business, but you get the support of that big corporate network. And I love the model. I wish more places would use it and go under that umbrella.
So do you charge for that service or do you just offer it free?
And when you think about it, I mean, my salary is basically kind of spread out. It's
Okay.
I'm on salary right now, so my services are kind of spread out evenly, among our
So they definitely so they definitely do functional accounting, right?
Yes.
So,
Oh yeah. Our poor accountant, man, our controller, man, she works harder than anybody I've ever seen in my life. So,
yeah.
Counting everything.
So the founders of Bell Rock Brands, right?
No, actually, it's gone through a lot of different transitions. So the core players that are left are ones that have basically just been through it. They've really stuck it out. But there were some there were some things that just weren't a good fit, from previous leadership. And I'm coming in at a great time because I'm getting to see that rebuild. I'm getting to see what it looks like on the other end if you survive, through major shakeouts, that happen through mergers and acquisitions that just are messy. So I'm coming in at the end of the mess. So
okay, all right,
yeah, but new leadership.
So that's interesting because leadership is an interesting process. When you have poor leaders, or you have a shakeup, it's kind of like when a church splits. You know what I'm saying? When a church splits, you have all these ideologies and all this, theology people going to another church where they think they can hang their theology and stuff on. And then you have these other members who are just remaining. And, all of a sudden, man, they're just, what do I do? How do I do this? But you gotta keep things cranking at a normal rate. So I don't know, I'll have to look into maybe the stock process, and I should have done that before this. But I think what happens is in a shakeup of a company or there's a merger and acquisition, I think it's all about revenue, right?
Oh yeah, and it's about the revenue, but it's not how much you make, it's how much you get to keep. And that's where the messiness kind of kicked in, was just not accounting for some of those things that cost more than they look like they cost. So it's tricky, and small businesses go through the same thing, except it's just more catastrophic to a small business overnight. But it happens in the corporate world, just kind of amplified, but you have more bodies to fight against it. So it's the same kind of problem though. It's not accounting for how expensive, even the cost of financing. It's one of those things you don't consider. It's like, I'll take out a loan, I'll take out another loan, or I'll take out this credit line, and it gets out of hand very, very quickly. And when you're thinking about that merger and acquisition, from my understanding and seeing kind of different companies go through this, it's one of those things where that's the thing that people don't really bank on. They're like, wait, how much do we owe in interest? This is crazy. How much is our interest payments, versus our principal? And it kind of goes back to even buying a house. It's the same thing. It really is. And it's same concept. So.
Yeah, I think that, for instance, and I guess my genre, and I've consulted medium-sized companies too, not not large companies like you work for and everything, but, and I think the transition, I've suggested that people sell their real estate to pour it back into their business. If they've got rental homes, they do that. And then, I've suggested that, it's probably time for you to hire your first person. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what's happening to the growth of your business. Okay. So, where are people, where are they going to go if they don't know? I mean, if they don't have access to an attorney, they don't have access to anybody, that I know of. And so I think it's, I just think people, small businesses and everything, they just need to know where they can go in order to get that advice to hire their first person, to maintain the quality of their first staff person. And I think, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to say that's actually, it's one of the things that's the biggest hurdle of setting up tax accounts. Who's going to manage this? Who's going to take time out of their day to calculate how many taxes go to the county versus the state versus, how do we set up federal taxes? And it's a whole process. And a lot of companies will, small businesses, they'll get hit up by, the bigger companies trying to handle payroll. And then they think they can do it through QuickBooks. And right. I've seen that so many times.
That's the best. That's the best right there, man. Don't get me started on QuickBooks, man. That is not for the business owner. That is for an accountant to manage.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah. That is definitely not for the business owner. That is not for the business owner's benefit. And it's one of those things where the smaller you are, the more you have to know. And you have to surround yourself with people that are doing it better than you. And it takes a humble mindset. You can still be driven. You can be a great entrepreneur. But if you don't have enough sense to get those people around you and make great connections, then you're missing out on a whole knowledge base that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because I don't know whether there's going to be a shift in this. And I'm not in favor of socialized medicine or anything else like that, because I think small businesses struggle. I don't know whether your business struggles with benefits, the handling of rethinking the total package of what they're going to get in exchange for their services or their work. And so I don't know how you justify that on a scale. I mean, do people come in and say, okay, what's your package? What are you going to pay me per hour and go from there?
Yeah. So, it's different for every company, but there's a big difference in the last company I worked for versus this one. And we have really comprehensive benefits, and I would love to take credit for it, but it already existed before I got there.
Okay. So all right.
It's great structure, but it is very pricey when you consider how much is coming out of each paycheck. Are you the sole provider of your family? And those are the ones I watch out for the most. Is an hourly worker trying to afford health insurance for a family is very, very tricky, because Denver's expensive. That's the short answer. Denver's very expensive. So if you're in charge of managing your household, the price can get added up quite a bit very quickly. And the company does pay a portion of that, but they can't pay 100% of it without some pretty big regulation changes there. So any company that's offering like 100%, we pay for our insurance, it usually has a whole lot of red tape behind it, which is You can go to this particular doctor, we're going to pay for this particular service, and yeah, exactly. Okay. So yes, yeah. So it's never like you just have full access to everything. It's kind of you pick and choose your battles, really. But we have on the medical side, we do have tiered pricing. So if you want, if you need lower deductible, if they're going to be using the services quite a bit, or if there's an ongoing illness in the family that is going to cause you to max that out, then, there's different ways to structure it, really. But we had the opportunity before I said yes to this company to kind of review that. And it's becoming one of those things that negotiates salary as well for executives, where if you have to kind of counter that in there, it's like, am I making money or am I losing it at this point by taking this position? So, and what am I gaining on the other end of it? So that's when that total rewards thing kind of comes into mind. It's, what does the real overall picture look like?
Wow. So,
I just threw a lot at you.
No, that's all right. I can digest it pretty quickly. But I think I'm stuttering because I really, help me out with this. I think in order to, let's just throw this out here. Let's say that you want to attract really decent workers. And I'm not going to ask you what your hourly rate is, okay? But let's say you hire somebody and you know that they've made fast track into management of some sort just because of your conversation or whatever, or their work history. Okay, so they're not your average typical hourly worker. So, are you going to put them in a different, setting in the company in order to utilize their skills? But I don't know. What do you think that a successful company, rather than taking away from an hourly wage earner and knowing the ROI on their stuff that they sell, why can't they offer 100% insurance to everybody?
Oh, that's a good question. And it has to do with the likelihood of them using the insurance as well. And your buying power depends on how many bodies you're actually negotiating at that point. When you're negotiating with like a Cigna or United Health, when you're negotiating with them, they're like, I have this many employees, I have this many eligible to sign up for these benefits. What can you do for us? And, how can we get the rates under control? If you didn't have control of it and someone had a major illness, it can cause some pretty high skyrocketing for the company to have to pay. And I've seen it happen before, and it's just what kind of falls outside of the normal realm of what people use their insurance for. If you have that 100% pay, one employee having a major issue can kind of mess it up for the rest of them, to be honest. And it just has to do with that collective shared, that shared package. What does that really look like? And some people will never use their insurance, and some people will use it quite a bit. And it ends up leveling out. But if you have someone with major surgeries, or, even having to deal with cancer, constant chemo treatments, things like that, it can cause some pretty big spikes that aren't really, that are hard to level out. And that's where a company can kind of get in trouble.
Yeah, so it's the ebb and flow, right? I mean, in terms of how the premiums are adjusted. But I don't know the data or the research back on people using their insurance. But do you think that the American employee, or maybe the employees that you have, is having insurance as important as to more so than actually making money?
So I think we're now to the point where the money part is way more important. So I have employees that have dropped health insurance altogether, and they're like, I'll figure it out. Like, I'll figure it out with the state. This is getting too expensive for me. And there's a fine line of balancing the two, where it's, higher wages mean that you actually can afford to use your insurance. I mean, that's kind of some of it too. When you think about copays, it's, am I going grocery shopping this week, or am I paying, 3 copays? And that's the decision some families have to make. And I try to be mindful when I make recommendations that I'm talking all the way up and all the way down as HR. And it has to be messaged, and it has to be with consideration of everybody.
Well, the thing about it is that, you talk up and down and everything. But one of the pet peeves of an employee is the deductibles. I mean, my son-in-law is a very successful pharmacist, and he's got good benefits. And they have a family. And they can pay the premium. But their freaking deductible is like sky limit, man. It's crazy. What? So why do I even have to have insurance and pay that deductible? I might as well just go ahead and pay cash for my teeth or my eyes, because I'm going to spend $5,000. I don't know. How does that freaking work?
Yeah, and that has to do with the provider too. And there are when shopping for benefits, you have to see what the likelihood is, that people are going to use it. But also, you can get into some trouble when it says, well, we'll pay 20% of this, or we'll cover 80% of this. And when you're talking about several $1,000s worth, your family still can't afford the 20% you got to cover. And I think that's where the low copays really kind of come into play. So our current plan, has reasonable copays. And just for example, I went to the chiropractor yesterday, just because I'm sitting all day long on the computer.
Sure.
So,
right.
Went there and, met a new chiropractor. The most I had to pay out of pocket for my visit was $58. Yeah. And that was my copay. If I had paid cash for the appointment, that would have been quite a bit more. Sure. And also, I wouldn't have had a guarantee that I was going to be able to go back. There wasn't really a plan in place at that point. So, my insurance, I made sure before I signed up for the appointment, what does this really financially look like for our family? Can I afford to use this more than once? And just understanding what your benefits really are before you sign up, because it is nearly impossible to get out of it unless you have a major life event. Once you've signed up, you really do have to wait for open enrollment to come back around.
Exactly, so, right. That's enough.
You're thinking about a year out. It's frustrating too.
So have you had hassled phone calls from people that are really pissed off because they signed up and they want out and everything?
Oh yeah, and it's one of those things where that's the not nice part of HR, is getting those phone calls, because you also side with them a little bit too. It's like, yeah, I wish I don't want to pay this next year. So the cool part about HR is that I do have some control over that too, where I can broach this topic and say, hey, this is getting out of control. This is getting too expensive. This is not something our employees really need. And we can try to negotiate something different around, for the next year coming up. And we're locked in for the year, but that doesn't mean that I can't start those conversations next week, which is on my calendar. So, I'm trying to negotiate just better rates for everybody, and just making sure that we're fully covered on the package. It's like, I like the extra bells and whistles, but if I'm not going to use them, I don't want to pay for them, and that's the biggest argument there. So
it's interesting. I don't understand the you sent me some information, and it says handling retaliation and discrimination allegations. I mean, what the heck? How do you what is that all about in HR?
Oh man. Yeah, and this is one of those areas where HR is the most likely to help and also stick their foot in their mouth. So I'm going to take a stab at it.
Are you going to take the fifth here? Are you going to take the fifth, or go on? Okay.
No, definitely not going to. We don't have the option of pleading the fifth as HR. So,
okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's tricky, and this probably started about 10 or 11 years ago, really. I started noticing there's a big difference in hiring then versus hiring now, and how employees are treated at work. And when you think about subgroups, you think about different minorities, or different coming from different backgrounds.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that's what the big topics are, the ones that people think about. What's right in front of them. What where are you from? What color is your skin? What is your family like? And those are ones that are a little bit more obvious to everybody. But when you start thinking about all of the mental illnesses and, just hurdles that people have to get over at home, it's very difficult to represent everybody all the time.
Okay.
And you have to try to shake out, what's real and what's not real. And a lot of times, and this is the retaliation against the employer, I see someone get in trouble at work. They stop showing up for 2 weeks. They get terminated. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I think you're discriminating against me. And then it comes up after the fact. And they said, well, no, I'm treating you just like everybody else. You can't skip out on work for 2 weeks, and it's setting expectations like that right out of the gate. And you have to be fair before even day one. And it even starts during the hiring process. People have unconscious bias that it's like, I want to hire someone just like me. And that is the most dangerous part of getting into business and being an entrepreneur too, small business owner. you don't want 4 of you working there. Trust me.
No, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to hire for diverse skill sets too, and sometimes those are overlapping concepts where someone comes from a different, a different socioeconomic background than you, and they have different experiences than you. But you can't just keep hiring yourself over and over again. And you're losing out on all of the diverse ideas that you could be bringing to the table.
Well, that's interesting because here's what I think. I think that, I had a consulting business and I did fairly well with it. We were in the process of possibly buying cars for the consultants, and I paid them very, very well. And took care of them very well. And but the entrepreneur aspect of being an employee, I think, crosses over into a corporate environment. And so I think if you said diverse backgrounds and everything, I think it goes back to what we talked earlier about those family core values and how they're going to transfer into the workplace. The other thing of it is too, and I don't, I'm kind of not running out of time, but this is a great pod. But I think sports plays a big fact into your work ethic as well. And I think that, not everybody can play sports, but I think it goes back to the home environment and a lot of those things so that people can be a good employee. Now, are you guys unionized or?
No, actually, we're not unionized, and I don't think that it would really play out that well. So there is something going on right now in California that's kind of forcing the topic on unionizing a little bit, and it's some new regulations that are kind of kicking in. And California is kind of notorious for being very difficult on the HR team. And
let's blame that on the governor. Okay, let's just put all that stuff on the governor. Okay.
Yeah. And as soon as you figure it out, then they change it. It's like they want to keep us all guessing. But
just a sidebar. So I had to get a birth certificate. I can't find mine when I moved. Okay. I've got an apartment, and anyway, so I grew. I was born in California, so I got online, paid $29. So I hadn't heard from anybody. I hadn't got an email. So I called the I don't know, DMV or wherever I had to call. And they said it'll be 14 weeks before I get my freaking birth certificate out of California.
I absolutely believe that.
I said, what the holy heck is that? I said, let me just say something. I'm going to blame the governor. And she said, spot on, because he did this. He did it a year ago. And I said, last time I lost mine, I got it in 10 days. Okay. I got to wait 14 weeks now. Anyway. So yeah, I think different strokes for different folks, right?
But and that also goes back to hiring remote employees. That's a hot topic where everybody's coming back to the office. Government entities are not figuring that out quick enough, and they have a lot of remote workers that are incredibly distracted. They're also way too lean. I mean, the IRS, for example. I mean, you can't get anything done there. I mean, they just have so few employees for what their needs really are. And bringing them back to the office just means that they're looking at each other. There's still not enough of them to process the work. So it's not as easy as just bring everybody back to the office. It's what kind of work are they doing when they're there, when they're engaged. And the government entities are not figuring that out quick enough. And it's to the dismay of everybody. We're all affected by that.
How do you I'm a big proponent of tapping a good person in your organization and putting them on a career path. How do you identify those people?
Yeah, so for me, that process starts during the interview process. I mean, if I have a chance to get a hold of them beforehand, I really do ask a lot of questions about, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What does success look like for you? And some people say, I just want to do the best I can, and they have a lot of personal endeavors they're trying to accomplish. And the ones that are really kind of career minded, they have a chance to shine there with that question. And it's, hey, I would really like to work on, expanding my skill sets. I would like to work on possibly managing a team, that's when they first express interest in that. If the HR person starts asking about it early. Right now, though, Bell Rock has an incredibly low turnover for the industry, and it's kind of incredible to watch. Yes, and it's completely opposite of the environment I'm coming from, which is grocery has incredibly high turnover.
Yeah,
so,
they do. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, should I even learn your name at this point?
Right,
so
exactly.
I don't want to get used to you. Yeah, so Bell Rock, with that comes, with loyalty comes the lack of expanding your skill sets without like a pretty deliberate move. So right now we're rethinking that. We've had employees with us for years and years that only know our way of doing things, that only know exactly what their job is. And we're rethinking that. And I think it takes a customized design to really get where your employees need on that. So I'm sitting down figuring out what everyone's interests are. I have someone that's working on the science team that wants to, further develop the IT skills, figuring out, some of the 3D modeling. It's like, I wish I could express what's in my mind sometimes. And so, I'm shopping for programs and, existing resources that will help them get there. And when you think about holding on to this person, how long we've kept this person, they're worth the investment over time, because I can't go out and shop for them. I can't shop for loyalty. And everybody wants to be at work there. And I said, this is a unique opportunity to grow, to really grow our people.
So do they ride skateboards and all that stuff around?
No, it's funny.
Because they're a hippie organization? I'm just kidding.
Not everyone is even a user, which I thought was very interesting, because I'm it's not my cup of tea, but but I understand where everybody else that I work with, and I can still have intelligent conversations about it, even though it's not my choice, and it's funny working in HR, and there's so many 420 posters in our office right now. It just blows my mind. Currently on my window, so I can kind of look like a cool kid, I have a Mona Lisa that is holding a marijuana joint.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, yeah. So you're playing the role. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, exactly. So I said this is the first time that HR would ever be leading the charge on this.
That's funny. That's hilarious. I mean, growing up in California, I did my share of weed and everything, and we would go surfing, and we would see hallucinogenic sharks that were out in the water. But I'm telling you what, I think that every company has to take a look at those guys. And I have a good friend of mine. He works for our franchisee in Ashland, Kentucky, Chick-fil-A. And Steve's a good friend of mine, and Bobby's a good friend of mine. But Bobby showed his, he started as a cashier, right? Doing chicken, doing all this kind of stuff. But then Steve just kind of tapped him on the shoulder, man, and said, "Hey, listen." So now he's the general manager for Steve. He's over quite a few employees. Very young guy. And the next store that they're going to be building there in Ashland area and everything, he's going to be the new GM, and he also gets the rights to own the franchise. The point is this: I think that you need to rise up good employees wherever you can, and they will rise to the occasion, whatever you give them.
Yes, and to play a devil's advocate a little bit, there are employees that won't want what you want for them, and it takes a conversation really early on. It's like, hey, I see you really doing well with this. Is this something that you want to expand? Are you interested in managing other people? Are you interested in managing, more tasks? Are you interested in taking on more? And, I have, like, just for example, I have like an all-star, on the production team that he just does better and better every year. He has no aspirations to running a team. And he's just he's our high performance. So, he's our high performance employee. And he likes to keep his head down and just work and, just constantly refine what he does. And then we have others that, joined 3 months ago that are saying, hey, I would love to take over, take over this team here. And it has to do with interest and ability.
Sure.
It's kind of a two-way street there, but it's you have to identify it. You have to make sure that it's very obvious that you're looking at them for that particular purpose.
So do you bonus out high production on the line?
What's that?
Do you bonus out people for high production on the line? Like if this guy, whatever. I believe that, and I don't know whether you guys do profit sharing or what that whole process is. But I think that in order to build a good team, I think profits are profits, but and so if you have a good employee, and I don't know how you do this in a corporate world, but I do know how you do it in a small business, is you give them a bonus, and you let everybody know. Listen, and this is just me. I would do it wrong, but this is what he's been doing for us, and he's increased sales or revenue by X, Y, Z, and you can do the same thing, and we'll bonus you the same thing. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, and that's one of the things that you have to revisit constantly in a corporate environment is, there's the fair pay, but if I do the bare minimum versus really excelling, am I making anything else? So like, am I going above and beyond for nothing? And once employees figure that out, you get bare minimum across the board because we're human beings. You're going to do the least amount of work for the most amount of money. And that's kind of the name of the corporate world there. But yeah, you have to make sure that you're rewarding the good performance. It's pretty critical. In one way or the other, you have to at least recognize that there's a difference. So you can't reward both the same way. Yeah. If you've got bare minimum, you can't celebrate it the same as a high production team.
Interesting. So how would you consult a small business, and we'll kind of close with this, on structuring your HR and growing their company in order to be successful?
So if a small business right out of the gate has to know what the big picture looks like, and you have to get the regulatory side covered first and foremost, your tax accounts and making sure that everything is set up properly and you know who's going to handle it. Because if you handle that, that means that you're not handling something else. So it's not always best for business owners to become their own HR. There are very few people that can really do that, and it's difficult. It's very difficult to do that, even if you're good at it. So even as strong in HR as I am, I struggled with that at times where it's like, oh crap, I got to go run this over here. I got to make sure to do this, and I got to turn in this report. And it took me away from tasks that really mattered, which was keeping the employees motivated, making sure they had everything they needed at work, as a business owner. So it's a trade-off. There's only so many hours you have in a day, and right. You have to figure out what your highest and best use is. And you have to figure out who on your team it can consistently take on the workload. Just because you can do it does not mean that you should. And for small businesses, spreading yourself too thin right out of the gate when you're talking about regulations and reports, it's a death sentence. You're pulling off of everything you're passionate about. So if you establish that baseline right out of the gate, who's going to be running your team, who's going to be running the HR side of things. If you can get that together right out of the gate, you've got a better employee experience, which means lower turnover, it means lower cost ultimately, yes. to the small business owner, because having to replace that person is more expensive than anybody realizes. It takes time and money to train, and right. You have to kind of have a mentality of like, I'm going to hire this person and I'm going to keep them. And, that's not to say they're going to be retiring as your cashier, 30 years from now, but you have to spell that picture out really, really clearly right out of the gate.
Thank you so much. And I really, this could go on for another hour.
I could go on for days. I mean, I get paid to go on for days on this one.
Yeah, right. Well, I can't pay you, but you can get paid. Okay. So, but listen, tell Todd I said hi. And
absolutely.
Once again, just great to have you. And we will be sharing this probably later on this afternoon on all my social media outlets. And I hope that they get the message. So thank you so much, Amanda.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.